Hello, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us for this third in a series of technical webinars brought to you by the NVIDIA and VMware community. Due to the size of our audience this morning, you will be in listen-only mode. During the course of the presentation, should you have a question, we ask that you type it in the chat window. If not answered immediately, it will be held in the queue and answered at the completion of the presentation. Leading off the webinar today is Tony Pikeday, Senior Product Line Marketing Manager for VMware. Tony, you have the floor.
Great, thank you, and thanks for joining us. So let me start with a little bit of context setting. Organizations around the globe are transforming really in response to a dramatically increasing footprint of data, challenging workflows that inhibit collaboration, and the increasing need to place extensible computing power in the hands of skilled resources who need to be productive anytime, anywhere. End-user computing has evolved, supplemented with major leaps in graphics virtualization technology to create new digital workspaces, as we call them, that really address these concerns. Today we're going to hear from Southwest Florida Water Management District and their experiences tapping into the power of desktop and graphics virtualization and what it's done for their IT and, more importantly, their end users. So I'm going to start by introducing John Mesa. He's the Performance Engineering Team Lead at Esri. John?
Thanks, Tony. So I'd like to start very quickly with a brief description of the technology stack that Pro works in when people are virtualizing it. And Pro rides on a hypervisor, and in this case, we're going to be talking about VMware and ESXi using Horizon VMs, which we found to provide really a good user experience. And to enable all this technology to allow Pro to give that great user experience, we use the NVIDIA grid cards, and you're going to hear a lot more about that. For right now, the demand for ArcGIS Pro, it's new, and the demand is very high. Pro is a new application, newly developed. It's been in general availability for about 1 year. In the new development, it was developed with a very modern contemporary rendering engine. This was designed from the ground up. It was designed by Esri Development, and it really is a big major component that makes ArcGIS Pro the premier GIS platform on this planet. Our users now are rendering more pixels than they ever have. This new rendering engine helps to deliver all that new data to our users with a great user experience. ArcGIS Pro now pulls together 2D and 3D graphic visualization of their data, along with the spatial analysis that the users expect. To do this, the rendering engine in Pro is built to take advantage of the most current graphics libraries, DirectX and OpenGL. Those libraries take full advantage of a modern GPU. So on a physical desktop, you can have a GPU there, and you will get a great user experience. Well, now you can also get that great user experience in virtualized environments. ArcGIS Pro has been tested in multiple virtualized environments by Esri, and to ensure the density that our users expect and need. So to make this happen, the NVIDIA Grid vGPU technology works on not only VMware Horizon 6.1, but also it works with Zen Desktop, Citrix Zen Desktop, and Zen App. Then down on the hypervisor level, it takes advantage and works well with Citrix Zen Server and vSphere 6. So with the Grid vGPU technology, that's where all of that virtual GPU sharing and load balancing happens to give that GPU power to all the VMs riding in that hypervisor. So we're going to hear from our friends at the district who are going to describe how they used VMware and NVIDIA grid cards to virtualize Pro.
Great. So thanks very much, John. Here are our speakers for today. And to give you some background, the district rolled out ArcGIS Pro in the second half of last year. They're going to define their role and the involvement in the project and define what the district is and their mission statement. From the district, we're happy to have Eric Bashevsky and Lee Vershowski joining us. So gentlemen, why don't you both take a moment to introduce yourselves.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Eric Bashevsky. I'm an infrastructure architect here at the Southwest Florida Water Management District. I've been with the district for 13 years. I specialize in Cisco UCS, VMware, SQL Server, IS, and Esri GIS Server here at the district. And I hold a bachelor's and master's degree in Management Information Systems from the University of South Florida. So for the project that we're talking about today, the role I had was I was the lead information technology resource for the design, testing, and implementation of the solution.
And I'm Lee Vershowski, GIS server and database analyst here at the Southwest Florida Water Management District. I've been with the district for 9 years, and I've been in GIS for all those 9 years, with a bachelor's degree from the also from the University of South Florida in geography. I've been working with ArcGIS software for those 9 years, including SDE and server. I've also done some scripting, both in JavaScript and Python. My involvement with the project has been to be the GIS subject matter expert, providing assistance with ArcGIS Pro, both in testing and implementation.
Hey, great. Thank you.
Okay, and as you guys can see in the slide here, the mission of the district is to manage water and other related natural resources to ensure that we're meeting the needs of both current and future users. So really, in order to do that, the district employs a large number of engineers and scientists, and those people use a lot of both past and present data to run a number of models and simulations. So the purpose of the solution that we're talking about today was really to make sure that we give our users an efficient way to actually perform those models and simulations, which then they use the output of to really base a lot of the decisions and things that we do.
Okay. So now let's get into a little bit of Q&A, Eric and Lee. I've got some questions for you that I think will be really helpful to our audience as they understand your implementation better. So Lee, let me start with you. What were the district's business drivers for 3D graphics?
Well, primarily our engineers and modelers, they're starting to use 3D modeling software tools for a lot of their projects, so things like ArcGIS Pro. The ability to visualize model results also helps our scientific modelers calibrate their models and also be able to explain their decisions to the decision maker, or the results to their decision makers and to the public.
Great. And so why does the district care about actually virtualizing ArcGIS Pro?
But currently our average user's PC can't handle the heavy 3D graphics of ArcGIS Pro. So with the Horizon and the NVIDIA grid cards, Pro can give us flexibility to quickly spin up a number of machines for specific projects that require those capabilities.
Okay, excellent. So Lee, also to you, how does the district leverage modeling?
Well, basically, we're in fulfilling the district's mission. We use several predictive models, which are important tools for understanding how water flows through the ground and surface water systems, and how those systems respond to changes in rainfall, surface water runoff, and pumping. So, for example, our surface water flow models are used to identify flood-prone areas, and 3D visualizations help demonstrate flooding scenarios to policymakers and homeowners. Whereas groundwater flow models show the impact of pumping on aquifer levels and on neighboring wells. Water quality models are used to predict the impacts of nutrients and surface water runoffs on lakes, rivers, and coastal waters. And this information is then used to ensure that there's adequate water supplies for a rapidly growing population and to provide quality of natural water bodies that are important to economic drivers.
Great. Thanks, Lee. So what types of data do your analysts use?
We actually use quite a few different types. We've cooperated in several different LiDAR mapping projects across our 16 counties. The results are digital elevation models for nearly the entire district, which provide a fairly accurate look at what the surface of the district looks like. Hydrogeologic data, such as water levels and transmissivity, are collected by a series of data collection stations and wells by the district staff. Rainfall levels are also collected throughout the district from some of these same stations, as well as we collect them from other agencies. Pumping data from our commercial and private well sources is collected through the district's regulatory efforts. And all of the data then come back and are stored in our Oracle databases and SDE. And through the combination of the data and our modeling efforts allow us to then build and utilize those predictive models to protect our precious water resources.
Excellent. So, Eric, I want to turn to you next. And this is often critical, when you think about desktop and application virtualization, the linchpin in all of this tends to be the user experience. So, at the district, what has been the user experience so far?
So far we've had a pretty good user experience. Right now we don't have the ability to really run any of these heavy 3D projects on normal workstations. We have a handful of high-end PCs that are rather expensive, but you end up having staff having to share those PCs, and it really doesn't make for an efficient work environment. But with the solution that we put in place now, we can spin up a number of machines fairly quickly to give access to those users, so they're not really getting bottlenecked. And with the same time, in regards to density, with the testing that we've done, we've been able to get up to 10 of these Horizon VMs running what we consider to be heavy 3D projects. So 10 machines running heavy 3D, both pulling in and rendering the project, and then with an 11th person in the Horizon solution, actually just using ArcGIS Pro doing normal pan and zoom functions. With that load, that 11th person was still able to function without any great detriment to their performance. So far we've been having a pretty good result.
That's excellent. And now, it would probably help to talk a little bit more about the orchestration of the componentry, because I find so often customers may struggle with, it's one thing to put together a modest pilot, but then actually architecting a solution that you can viably operationalize. So what does your infrastructure look like?
Right. So this truly is a solution, and when it's a solution, you've got all those multiple layers of hypervisor, hardware, graphics cards, back-end storage, all having a part to play in actually making it be successful. So the solution that we've implemented here for the hypervisor layer, we've used VMware Horizon's product. For the server hardware piece, we are using a Cisco UCS C-series model, specifically a 240M4. For the graphics cards, we're using 2 NVIDIA Grid K2 cards, so that's 2 cards in one C-series. Right now we only have the one that we're providing, but we're looking at expanding that to provide basically to provide more systems to our users. And for the storage side, because all of our VMs have to run on storage somewhere, we're using an EMC VNX2 solution, and we actually have all of our machines running on tiered storage inside of that solution. And so Horizon, what we've also found is it's really flexible. There's a number of different ways that you can configure the actual VMs to meet the needs of the users, because not everyone is going to need to have a user that does the heaviest 3D modeling out there. As John mentioned, ArcGIS Pro does 2D and does a lot of different aspects of 3D, light 3D, heavy, etc. And so the Horizon solution with the NVIDIA K2 cards actually allows you to build different VMs that can support those different levels of usage. So you're not over allocating resources, and you're getting the best density to the hardware that you can. So for our specific solution, we're using what's referred to in Horizon as persistent full clones, and that's really because for our users, our workflow is a project gets spun up, and the engineers, modelers need to have those virtual machines available to them for the duration of the project, and at the end of the project, we can actually remove those VMs and recoup the resources. But during the duration of that project, they actually need to be able to log into the same machine every time, save things to the desktop, install other little add-ons and things like that. So they really need as close to a full machine as possible for the duration of that project. And that's the reason why we went with the persistent full clones for our specific project here.
Excellent. And certainly you've chosen a really capable infrastructure here. I'm pretty familiar with Cisco UCS, and certainly the C240 and the whole construct around unified fabric and stateless computing that Cisco introduced provides you that ideal underpinning, I would say, as well as the EMC VNX2 SAN underneath it. So it sounds like you've got kind of this ideal optimized infrastructure that's ideally suited to give the best performance. Now, you may have had other attempts, I'm not sure, in the past around trying to virtualize these users. Oftentimes, for many organizations, it's not their first kick at the can that necessarily yields success. So do you want to share with us kind of what that road looked like for you in terms of trying to virtualize those users over time?
Sure. So we've had a number of different attempts with a number of different products, not just ArcGIS Pro, for the modelers that had graphic requirements. And in our normal VMware environment, we just couldn't provide them the back-end graphics resources that they needed to actually do that final render of the data that they're working on. So it really wasn't a good solution for them. But when we move them into Horizon, we've had success not just with ArcGIS Pro, but with a handful of other modeling solutions that we have here that do have a graphical requirement to it. And as we implemented Horizon to do that, we also got a number of other benefits from using that technology. It really gives a nice one-pane management interface for managing the user accesses to the different machines, to provide them access, remove access, give another user access. If I need to increase disk drive space, memory, resources, all that stuff that you can traditionally do in VMware, you can still do in Horizon to these VMs just as easily through that one pane of glass through the Horizon software. And really the provisioning process is really, really good. It's one of the best that we have here at the district, to be where once you've done the time to build your templates and to figure out what your requirements are, you go through a very quick little wizard, and then the Horizon software works and does what it's supposed to do, and it provisions a number of VMs with a number of requirements, assignments, applications installed on them, all the way through to the point to be where once they're done provisioning, the users can just log in and use them. So we've also got a number of other benefits from Horizon that wasn't necessarily the direct intent of what we were doing, but they are still really good benefits.
Great. You can see emerging here a very clear story around how the solution in total offers you probably a much more attractive OpEx proposition than maybe your prior physical environment, and as well, I'm sure from an infrastructure point of view, you're getting great efficiency out of the platform. Oftentimes, I think the flip side of the equation is what this does for your end users, because I know we've often seen with folks like yourself dramatic changes in things like workflow and productivity and just styles of work and collaboration that were simply not possible before they virtualize. So, let's shift to your users a little bit here. What can your users now do with the virtualized platform that they really couldn't before? And this is probably directed to both Lee and Eric. Either one of you guys want to chime in here.
Well, basically what the scenario of which we are currently facing is we have a lot of users that need to run a lot of models, especially the heavy 3D ones, but we don't have the end PCs for it. We only have a few high-end PCs. So being able to leverage having multiple of those out there, now we're getting the kind of the opposite effect of now we're having the potential for multiple of these virtualized stations per user, so they can run several different models all at the same time. So
Excellent.
things. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, continue.
Well, I mean, mostly for ArcGIS Pro. So they're having to run several of those models. I don't know, was there anything else? Okay.
Great, thank you. So, I think for a lot of the folks attending our session today, they may be at various stages in their own journey towards virtualizing applications like ArcGIS Pro. And this is probably a great way for them to get some guidance or get their foot in the right direction as far as where to get started. That often, tends to be the most kind of troublesome aspect of starting that journey. So, one of the things we really wanted to have you share with our audience here is, things like, what guidance can you offer? What are the best practices, that you can take from your experiences, both good and bad, that you could recommend to the folks listening in today, that want to virtualize ArcGIS Pro and, really similar 3D intensive mission critical applications like that. Any guidance you want to offer folks in terms of best practices, how to move forward?
Yeah, sure. So for those that are going to be in charge of trying to build the solution, size the solution, really I have two big takeaways from what we did here. The first one is go out and talk to the people, your customers, the users that are going to be actually using the solution once it's implemented. You have to go out and talk to them, and then go talk to them a second time, and then probably go a third time, sit down and actually watch them run the models, because you need to get really good requirements. And a lot of times, the users that we're working with, they're not IT people. They're people that are used to running ArcGIS Pro. They're engineers. They're scientists. They're not the ones that can really tell the people that are building the hardware solution what their software models truly do to the systems that they're running on. We need to engage them and work with them to really figure those things out. And the reason I say that is because all throughout what I've been talking about today is I've been saying heavy 3D. In our environment, we got that 10 user density running what I say is heavy 3D. Well, heavy 3D can be a number of different things to a number of different people. Until you actually sit down with the users and discuss with them what they're truly doing and actually see the performance on the systems, you don't really know. And you run the risk of either undersizing or oversizing your environment. And that brings us to the second point, which is to actually do the testing. The way we got that number of the 10 users and the one person and they're still okay doing pan and zooming was after many, many hours of trying to build and run tests. And we tested 2D, light 3D, heavy 3D, concurrent, stopping, starting, pan and zooming. There's just tons of stuff that you can do to make sure that ultimately all the people that are going to use your system can truly use it and have that good experience so your project is successful.
Fantastic. So, actually we've got a number of great questions coming in on the Q&A. You can tell there's definitely a lot of interest from our viewership today in what the district has done. So I'm going to get to those in a minute, but I want to do a little bit of a plug here so that folks can get acquainted with the resources that NVIDIA and VMware have put together to help everyone here in their virtualization journey. So just by virtue of attending the session, you actually visited our community page and signed up. So that's actually a great first place to start. I would encourage you to continue to visit that community. That is really our watering hole, jointly owned by NVIDIA and VMware. We are striving to connect folks like yourselves with the technical expertise that exists in our organizations and with peers of your own in the industry who've got deep graphics and virtualization expertise and can help you, solve a lot of the day-to-day issues or challenge questions you may be running into. So it's a great place to connect with peers and with expertise in the industry and ultimately accelerate, the success that you're trying to have with your deployment. This is also the place where you're going to find, not only this event, but as well prior events we've hosted as far as these webinars are concerned and future offerings that are coming down the pipe. So definitely you want to keep visiting the community page to get connected with those offers. Next, we want to talk a little bit about NVIDIA Grid Test Drive. So this is our hosted environment that allows you to have a great kick at the tires kind of experience, because oftentimes nothing proves or helps you win the argument with your peers, with your management, like being able to log into an environment that's been personally carved out for you on VMware and NVIDIA infrastructure with actual hosts equipped with the NVIDIA Grid card and Horizon, and preloaded with a lot of great apps that let you in real time see what the experience is like, not only for the high-end design applications like those you see here, but even office productivity stuff and some leisure stuff as well. So you can actually get a great full spectrum view of how NVIDIA Grid with VMware Horizon performs in your own personalized virtual desktop. So I'd highly encourage you to take advantage. You can see the link up there where you can go in and again, have a test drive kind of experience and see how it works. Next, we want to plug our Amplify partners. These are partners who are in that cross-section of strong investment in NVIDIA and in VMware. We are mutually investing in this select group of partners. These are our Amplify partners. They are our go-to for our joint solutions. They've made a lot of investment in their end-user computing practices, in technology and personnel and infrastructure resources to help you get started quickly and to maximize your success. So we definitely want you to keep them in mind, and a number of these may be servicing your needs today already. So definitely reach out to them because they can help you get started. Now next, this may be a little faint. I'm not sure if it's a contrast on my monitor, but hopefully you can see this. We've assembled a number of technical assets that you can download. These are free to access, and they can obviously help you with things like reference architectures, certified equipment. We've got application deployment guides. In fact, we've got one for Esri ArcGIS Pro that you can look at as well. And we continue to grow this library as we publish new content. So it's available not only at the links here, but as well through our community page. So I'd encourage you to bookmark these, review them at your leisure. And finally, some great social properties here where you can learn more about Grid and follow us on social, obviously, so you can kind of keep the conversation alive even after this event and keep up to date on the latest and greatest. So with that, let me move back to our speaker slide here. This is a great time to now go through some Q&A. So I'm actually going to look through our chat window here and see, maybe pick out a couple that we can tee up. So let's see. Here's a question, and actually I got to thank Rachel. A little shout out to her. She's got some great questions in here. Is there any info, and this is probably for Eric and Lee, I think, on the spec of the VMs for the heavy ArcGIS workload, number of vCPUs, RAM per VM? Do you use dynamic memory or vCPU over provision? So we might even have it from both angles, namely what Eric and Lee have done in their environment. And I don't know, John, if you want to weigh in on this as well from other experience you've got with customers of ArcGIS Pro. But Eric and Lee, maybe you want to take a first swing at this?
Sure. So what we found with our testing is while memory to the VM itself is important, with running Pro and these other models, it's not as important as having a faster clock speed CPU. So we've actually found that there's, and John can speak more to the details of this as well from the Esri side, but there's actually a nice little sweet spot when you're trying to allocate the cores from the underlying C-Series host to the VMs that are supporting ArcGIS Pro to be where you stop actually receiving benefit from adding more cores to it. Memory itself is important, but not as important as having that faster clock speed CPUs. I believe the machines that we were using that got that 10-person density, we found that I believe it was 6 cores, and we varied between 6 and 8 gigs of RAM being allocated to those machines to get the kind of load and density that we were working with.
Yeah, so
John.
this is John, and in our testing that we've done, we've, what Eric just said, we've seen repeatedly, depending on your workload and the type of processors that you have on your server, you will use 6 to 8 cores, virtual cores in your VM. This will help you get as much density as you can on that server. And keep in mind, ArcGIS Pro is a multi-threaded application, so there's a lot of threads going to deliver that user experience that people are seeing, that great user experience. So to do that, you're going to have to make sure that on your server you have a very modern contemporary processor, and to deliver 6 or 8 cores to all those VMs, and around 8 gig of memory is what we found to be good. But that also is dependent on your data, your workflows, and the other applications you have running in the VMs.
Great, thank you, John. And Tracy in the chat had a question on server spec, but hopefully through what you just heard, we covered that. But if there was any other specific piece of that you wanted elaborated on, obviously let us know in chat and we'll try and get to it. Another question here. So beyond ArcGIS Pro, Eric and Lee, what other apps did you deploy in the guest VM as far as browsers or Office apps or Autodesk or anything else like that?
Well, for essentially we had what I would say is the basic standard packages. We had the current version of Office running on them, etc. However, when we were doing all of our testing and our ArcGIS work, we were not running multiple applications beyond ArcGIS Pro or the other modeling applications on that system, just because we believe that those products and things should be used on the user's workstation itself. These machines for our solution are mostly for the processing and running of the models, so the person's own workstation isn't overcome by the resource utilization of that process. So we put those other applications on there because they are required for data staging, some report generation, etc., but there were not multiple things running at the same time. And if part of the question was also related to other modeling software that we've run on there, it's a number of really specific to kind of the water management and natural resources that we do. But to throw out the names, we've run ICPR4, we've run Groundwater Vista, which sits on top of ModFlow, and we've run regular ArcMap and ArcInfo on there as well right now.
Great, thank you. So what about the physical environment that your applications were running on before? That probably is a high-end PC or workstation. Essentially, what did you end up replacing? And if you can give us a sense of how powerful that gear was, even budget or cost or expense. Now that you've moved to virtualized, obviously you're on a different platform. But what was that pre-virtualized environment looking like for you?
Well, all of our workstations here, they're all Dell workstations. Those were high-end Dell, I believe they were Precision workstations. I don't know the exact model number off the top of my head, but they did have dual they did have, I believe, the dual quad cores. They did not have solid state drives in them, but they did have higher end video cards in them that had about 4 gigs of RAM on them.
Great, thank you. Now, Steve's got a question about what your modelers are using as clients, and the speed of the network or internet connection that they're using, that exists between the client and the back end. So, can you describe that a little bit?
Sure. So when you're connecting to the VMs in Horizon, you can use either client or the thick client. The web client basically just it's HTML access. We found that it seems to like Chrome the best in the testing that we've done, but we also like thick client, which you install locally on your workstation. That's actually our preferred method to use. Most of our users, they are essentially they're local. They're not across the WAN. They're all LAN connected to the back-end systems, and we have basically there's 1 gig connections from our machines back across into the data center.
Great, thank you. So Brian has a question. For your users, was there a need to modify their workflow when using the solution versus when they had dedicated? So and how was the acceptance by that community?
Well, the users actually didn't have to change their own workflows all that much, because ultimately we try not to store a lot of the data related to the models and whatnot on the machines that are running the models. We try to keep that, for IT best practices, out on network drives, other related storage, which is backed up and replicated. So really, the only thing that's changed between using these virtual machines and using the physical machines is they don't have as much storage space on them, and so that really hasn't changed their workflow all that much. The one benefit to the workflow change has been instead of them having to kind of schedule time using that same physical machine and walking over to it and going, oh, it's locked by John Doe, I guess I have to come back another day. They're requesting the machines, and the machines and resources are available for them when they need it.
Fantastic. Elliot's interested in knowing, ArcGIS Pro has this capability to run City Engine, and I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it. These are rule packages, and they want to know if the district have had any experience using Esri City Engine in this virtual environment. And we could even open that to John, too, if he's seen that with other customers and that application.
I will say for the testing that we did not test any of the heavy City Engine, but for some of the rule packages, they do apply to the standard renderers for 3D and ArcGIS Pro, and we did have some of that in our testing package. So we did do some rules packages on well depths and surfaces. So we did have some of that implemented, but not to the effect that I'm sure that City Engine does.
Well, I do know that City Engine has been tested and using the NVIDIA grid cards on Horizon, and the user experience there, and this is just pure City Engine, the application itself, it runs just as Pro does. It runs very well. In fact, the City Engine development team has a server for themselves to test and do development work on, so they are working on I'm pretty sure a Dell 7910 that has Horizon and NVIDIA Grid K2 cards. So yeah, so City Engine should do very well in the same environment.
Great, thank you. Eric and Lee, and I'm not sure if this is part of your implementation or not, with Horizon 6 we introduced app volumes, which virtualizes above the OS and allows you to dynamically attach a VMDK app stack to the user environment, and obviously help you consolidate your operating image that way. Was app volumes at all part of this? Matt wanted to know if you had used that in your environment.
That's actually a really good question. We did not have enough time in in the first phase of this project to actually use the app volumes in regards to ArcGIS Pro. We are using app volumes for the ICPR4 application, as I mentioned earlier, but we did not have enough time to actually fully test app volumes for Pro in this VDI environment. However, the limited experience that we do have with the app volumes, it looks like a really awesome tool, and that actually is what I will soon be spinning up and working on kind of a phase 2 now that we've gone live with our solution, is to roll not just Pro, but all of the applications, Office, etc., that are installed on these Horizon VMs and have them be basically provided via the app volumes. I can say I have installed ArcGIS Pro and ArcMap with the app volume technology, so I know I can virtualize it that way, but I haven't done performance testing with it yet.
Right, and as the resident Horizon guy on the event today, I'm definitely interested in following up with you to find out your experiences once you get a chance to give that a test drive. Here's a question on benchmarking, and I'll kind of throw this out to all 3 of my co-panelists here. Hans wanted to know how can I benchmark VMs with the grid solution to show to his management, essentially.
Eric, do you want to take that?
Yep, yeah, I can start with that. That was actually an obstacle that we had to figure out as we were going through this to, what things do I look at? How do I know how the system's actually doing? So we basically, for our solution, we monitored the normal VMware stats for the host itself. While we were inside of all the individual VMs, we just used what was native inside of the operating system. We also, when you get your Horizon licenses, you actually, because it's underneath the covers, it's actually close to a VMware Enterprise license, so you also are entitled to get vRealize. So we actually started to use that product as well, which gives you a deeper insight into the CPU and the threads and all of those pieces and parts. But one other thing that we did find as we were going through this proof of concept is, as of today, we don't necessarily have a very good way to look at the utilization of the NVIDIA card that's being provided up into the VM itself, but that is something that we discussed with both VMware and NVIDIA as part of the proof of concept project that we did, as a place that they can make an improvement and actually somehow build a plugin or something like that for Virtual Center.
And
yeah, go ahead, John.
The performance engineering team has done a lot of testing. We've also encountered what Eric described is it's really difficult to determine, to get the metrics off of the grid cards that are down on the hypervisor. We use the NVIDIA SMI command. It's a command line utility from NVIDIA, but we'd also like to see something in the UI. And we also have customization for Pro that instruments it to allow you to get metrics out of Pro and also to log it. So we've worked out a lot of processes and workflows to load down a variety of virtualized systems across a lot of hardware, and it seems to work pretty well.
Excellent, thank you. I want to make sure we covered this properly when we talked about the server spec. Did we go over what was the CPU speed on the host that you guys had?
I would have to go back and check what we currently have inside of the C series, but I believe it's in the Intel 2650 range. So we're probably talking 2.8 to 3 gigahertz, I believe.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and we've done our testing with the 2680s, and those are at 2.5 gigahertz. The 2687s are 3.1, I believe. So you always have to you have to manage processor speed with the number of cores that you're getting on there as well.
Great guidance. Now, let's talk a little bit about kind of connectivity for more remote or mobile users. I'm not sure if we talked about kind of the topology that you're dealing with as far as how your users are situated, but one of the questions here is, for the running VDI desktops, obviously you've had great performance over the LAN. Have you tried running these over like slower WAN links or even mobile connections?
That was also going to be another phase to the project that we've done, is try to, because the Horizon client does work on a number of mobile devices as well, and also potentially externally when you're on a personal device, depending on how we have Horizon configured. That was going to be another phase to the project that we look at as well, to move that piece of the service out to the users. But as of yet, we have not tried any of the mobile devices or over any of the slower connections.
Okay. Great. Here's one. Do you have any advice on data dissemination via HTML5 viewers to users who are outside of the persistent full clones? Have you tried that scenario?
We have not. However, in regards to beyond using the full clones, there can be a very good use case made for having basically the pool where you log in, you get a machine, you log out, the machine goes away, and it reprovisions that whole machine on its own, and you're just accessing them through the web client. The web client and the thick client really they really function almost the same. It's just necessarily the fact that you're in through a web browser, so some of the buttons are a little bit different.
Great, thank you. Let's talk a little bit about, after your experiences with the client devices that you're using, do you have any kind of verdict that you've reached about, what is the best or optimal thin client for the use cases that you're dealing with, including, form factors like tablets and such that you increasingly see in the enterprise? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, right now in our environment, we're only using full desktops to access via the clients and things. We actually don't have any true thin clients in our environment here, although we do have mobile devices, Microsoft Surface and Apple iPads. But again, that's in that second phase that we haven't really gotten to yet, so I can't really provide any good performance metrics or anything on that yet.
But as a direction, in your next phase, you may consider kind of some of these form factors, tablets like Surface and otherwise, I guess maybe for kind of the workflow or productivity aspect.
Yeah, yes, definitely. There are multiple. This was a proof of concept for us to get the solution in, figure it out, start providing the benefit to our modeling community for ArcGIS Pro and the other applications, which we have achieved. And now we're spinning up, now that we've seen the solution and seen how great all the pieces of it are, now we're starting to spin up and figure out where in our schedule are we going to roll in mobile devices, look at using app volumes for more of the applications, etc. So this is the beginning of probably what will be the district's longer story, as it were, in using these technologies.
In that evolution, do you see yourselves eventually at some point maybe even going to like a stateless or floating pool, like a non-persistent desktop, but kind of the illusion of persistency or customization with app volumes or user environment management? Is that at all in your consideration?
Actually, definitely. One of the other things, so we have ArcGIS Pro out now for our modeling community, our heavy 3D users, as we've talked about in this solution. But we don't have ArcGIS Pro necessarily out for every user that currently is an ArcMap user. In our environment here, a majority of our ArcMap users currently use Citrix to actually run it. However, when it comes to Pro and what it can and can't do, we really want to look hard at, like what you were just talking about, is those floating seat VMs, having a pool of those available for ArcGIS Pro. But that is actually the full rollout of ArcGIS Pro is actually something that our GIS staff are working on trying to schedule and figure out all the requirements for. But that is what you said is exactly what we want to try to investigate as being how we roll out.
Got it. And I'm trying to recall if we covered this already, but from a user experience perspective, are they assigned their desktop on a named basis, if you will, like nailed up per user? I know you have persistent full clones, but from the user ingress, are they kind of assigned on a named basis, or do you have them simply checking out, as concurrent users?
So currently for the modelers, we have a pool set up, and when the user logs into the Horizon client, or they basically are presented with the pool, the first time the user executes the access to the pool, they are assigned to a specific virtual machine behind the scenes, and then that's the machine they're assigned to. Whenever they log on and off, they always go back to that specific machine. Horizon is really flexible, and it doesn't have to be that way, but for the requirements of our modelers and what they need for the scope of the duration of their modeling projects, we needed them to basically stick to that specific machine.
Okay, great. Now, I'm not exactly familiar with these applications, but Bart wanted to know, do you use NVI or IDL? Are those familiar to you?
We might. I am not familiar with every single application that we use here, but those do not sound familiar to me. But I'm not 100% certain on that.
Okay. Okay, great. I am just scanning our question list. I think you guys have been batting these really nicely for the last almost half hour. I'm trying to make sure we did a reasonably good coverage of all these great questions coming in. Just scroll to the bottom here. There's a question on things like hardware and infrastructure costs versus workstation costs, and we really don't want you to have you expose specific details to what the district is dealing with, but do you have any broader comments on kind of the ROI or TCO equation that you've seen unfold, starting with physical, then moving to virtual? I know you mentioned that certainly from an OpEx perspective, it sounded like there were a lot of benefits for you, but if you look at purely the infrastructure CapEx, moving from physical to virtual, any kind of summary comments about that?
Well, really it comes down to, because those are questions that we have to look at, and as we're looking at our project to roll out ArcGIS Pro to our entire GIS community here at the district, those are the things that we're having to look at, and that's where it comes back to when I was talking about you really need to go out and talk to the users and figure out what they're actually doing, because not everyone that uses ArcMap that would eventually transition to Arc Pro needs those heavy-end workstations, needs a Horizon VM. So you really need to learn what your user community is to actually try to get those exact numbers to figure out where that breakpoint is between how many PCs you're going to have to buy versus the server piece. It's not easy. We're actually still working on that right now internally. But it's something that you really need to do to have, at the end of the day, have those numbers to give to your management and say, this is what we can do based on what we're actually doing, like what the customer is actually doing.
One other important part, and people often don't think of this, is you not only have to look at the cost of the physical hardware that you're replacing and what you're replacing it with, but it's also the cost of the administration that goes on with doing the admin on multiple physical desktops that are all over the buildings. And that includes the physical admin, the administration of the security for those boxes, and the software. It goes on and on. So that's not a simple equation. And we've done it here, in fact, for our virtualized environment, and we do see that the cost benefits are pretty obvious, especially for the higher end users.
Great. No, thank you, John, and thanks, Eric, as well. A couple more here. When you guys selected on Horizon 6, you may have gone down the number of, evaluating a number of different platforms and such. and you gave us great reasons about why you selected Horizon 6. Do you want to describe any of the kind of comparative exercise that you went through, if you did, as far as what eventually led you to Horizon 6?
Well, for us, it was a reasonably easy. It was an easy decision to go with the proof of concept using Horizon 6 because we are I say a large VMware shop. We're small in the grand scheme of companies, but everything we do, 99% of our systems are all VMware VMs running on Cisco hardware. So it just made sense for us for the evolution to try these high-end graphics VMs with Horizon to do a VMware Horizon solution on Cisco hardware.
Great. Here's one I know that we hear a lot. A lot of customers like yourselves, oftentimes from a security perspective, they still have some concerns around the fact that they now have virtualized users running on the kind of the trusted side of the firewall, if you will. And now they're in very close proximity to a lot of other mission-critical infrastructure. One question we got here, and this is from Paul, was around any malware protection that you might have evaluated or looked at. Certainly some solutions out there that are traditional in-guest agent-based solutions, instead of virtualized, they can spike IOPS and create performance issues. Have you had any kind of experiences there as far as AV or malware goes?
Well, we basically treat, in that respect, in a security respect, we treat these Horizon VMs the same way we treat the the handful of high-end physical PCs that we have out there, which is, they all have what RAV security solution is, which for us, we have Microsoft Endpoint Security. They're all behind the same firewall. They all get the same antivirus pushed to them, etc. The only difference would be is we have a different schedule on when the full scans run on what we deem as a modeling or PC, which is both those physical high ends and these virtual ones. So it runs on really off times, like on weird times, like on the weekends and things like that is when the full scans happen, as opposed to like on a weeknight or something like that. So we really use the same security as we do in our normal infrastructure. We just manage the timing of the schedule different.
Great, thank you. We're going to almost be ready to round this out. One thing I wanted to point out, and Rachel had shared this with me, there may be viewers out there who are in the oil and gas sector, and there's a great customer case study out there, VMware and NVIDIA Grid. They're called Legacy. They used ArcGIS alongside oil and gas apps, so like Spatial Energy, Petra, TRC Consultants, and a number of others. There's a link to the success story page, and Matt, maybe we can just see if there's a way to share that with all in the chat. So hopefully we can get that in front of folks who are listening. The last question in the 2 minutes that remain here, I might ask, is kind of the forward-looking one. Any comments around if a customer doesn't have existing hardware and they want to get started with a pilot or POC in their environment? Eric, any from your experiences, Lee, any final guidance you want to give people on how to get started?
Sure. So we here at the district, as I mentioned, we have a lot of Cisco server hardware. We actually have 3 different referred to as Cisco UCS domains that are running the B-Series Blade infrastructure. And when you go for the C-Series models, they actually can be configured to plug into your existing Cisco hardware, and then it's all managed through one pane of glass, and it's really simple. However, if you don't have to have that existing Cisco infrastructure either, because the C-Series model Cisco has designed to be basically that you can either plug that into their larger infrastructure, or it can be configured to be just like a regular rack-mountable server that has NIC cards and HBA cards to connect to your SAN and everything else. So it's not that big of a jump to try to use the Cisco hardware, which is what we have done here. And I think, John, you guys have done more with different hardware, so you can probably expand.
Yep. So we've found that the performance across similar servers like a Dell R730, your Cisco box, and HP Deal 380s, Gen 9s, they all provide comparable density and user experience. At Esri, we have the ArcGIS desktop virtualization appliance, which is on a Dell 7910 rack-mounted precision box, and that box is perfectly designed for people who want to just do a POC and virtualize Pro in their environment. So it's pre-configured with VMware Horizon, NVIDIA grid cards, and it'll help them.
Great, thank you. And I know we're like a minute over here, but I first want to thank John, Eric, Lee. It's been great dialogue today, great content. I'm really excited about how the story's unfolded for the district, so thank you for sharing that with us. And John, thank you for bringing us the Esri perspective in the solution and the technology. So hopefully, folks, you found it a valuable and informative session. We want to remind you, please do connect with us at the NVIDIA VMware community. You had the link earlier where you can interact with our expertise both at NVIDIA and VMware. And really our goal is to help you accelerate your efforts in virtualizing mission-critical apps like ArcGIS Pro and more while delivering an exceptional experience for your end users. So with that, I'll thank our panelists once again. You can visit us at the forums at the link in the chat window. And thanks again for your time today.